Come join Melissa and her guests on the Chats from the Blog Cabin podcast. From North Carolina, this podcast will have you feeling like you've known these folks for years. Listen in as they chat about life, culture, events, and more, all with a special Southern flair. Curl up with your favorite beverage and get ready to be entertained. Tune in now for a unique experience that's fun and insightful.
Hey, y'all, let me ask a question. What on earth does a glass of wine have in common with raising kids? And why might explain your parenting style better than any manual? Think about that. Welcome back to another episode of Chats from the Blog Cabin. You know, the show where I virtually invite people into the blog cabin to chat about life. And today we are chatting with Danielle Frank, who is the author of A Wine Lover's Guide. But because it's Women's History and it's our very last episode for Women's History Month, I always start off with a quote. And this quote is from Oprah. Danielle, I researched this quote and I felt like this really was about you after reading your bio. Passion is energy. Feel the power that comes from focusing on what excites you. And that's Oprah. So, Danielle, welcome to the show and tell us about yourself.
I love that quote and thank you for having me on your fabulous podcast. Yeah, I mean, it totally speaks to me as, you know, I feel like my whole story is sort of rooted in transformation and, you know, the kind that doesn't happen all at once, but through a series of unexpected pivots. I like to say I've lived multiple plot twists from, you know, moving from New York to LA, shifting careers out of the entertainment world into the world of wine and spirits, as well as navigating a broken engagement when I realized the future that I thought I was headed towards, including motherhood, wasn't the one that was going to be happening for me. And so instead of, you know, letting these detours define me, I sort of learned to rewrite the story entirely. And I love going on podcasts. Obviously, I'm promoting my book, A Wine Lover's Guide to Parenting. But really it's, you know, talking about how this book came to be and, you know, instead of letting the detours define me, you know, rewrote the story and talking about how bucking traditional timelines, embracing a life that looks different than the expected quote unquote checklist, and most importantly, discovering the freedom, humor, and purpose all in the unplanned. So yeah, through a lot of those shifts, I've channeled a lot of and navigated a lot of that through my writing. And when motherhood didn't happen for me, that's when I poured my heart into writing this book.
Yeah, so let's talk about the shift from the entertainment, you said entertainment world, right? To wine and spirits. So that's like going from like the south to the north, basically, pretty much. Just let's talk about that shift.
Yeah, I mean, I worked at Miramax International, you know, in my 20s, living in New York, traveling to the Venice Film Festival, Cannes Film Festival. I mean, it was amazing. The stories I have were unbelievable, but I wanted to move to LA. There were no studio jobs. There was only a personal PR firm was hiring, you know, representing the talent directly. And I knew these agencies because they would always be traveling with us abroad, promoting the films. You know, I just sort of had it in my gut instinct that I didn't want to do personal PR. No disrespect to publicists. But, you know, it's funny, if you saw the movie Jay Kelly that just came out with George Clooney, it really does depict it in a realistic way, how like the manager and the publicist is like their clients' lives are their entire lives. And that's just not me. I'm not a yes man. I care more about where I'm going to dinner rather than, you know, where having to cancel plans to walk somebody down, you know, a red carpet for a film they're not even in, or I don't know. But, you know, also at the time, the PR agency that I worked for in LA, I just got a really bad feeling like my first day when I walked in, there were like 3 other publicists crying in their offices. And I was like, what did I get myself in? It was a very toxic environment. And for the first time in my life, that's when I really realized, you know, that was the first big career pivot for me, is like, and that defining moment helped navigate my other pivots, like the broken engagement, with that feeling when you're just so unhappy being in something, being in a relationship, being in a job, and it's just not, I mean, I remember there were countless mornings where I woke up and just had that pit in my stomach of like not wanting to go in the office. I mean, you know, in my time in entertainment at Miramax, there's certainly days where I was like, wish I didn't have to go to work, but there was never that hit in my stomach. And I was like, this is an awful feeling. So I'm very type A, would never quit without having another job, but I did that. And because I just realized my personal health and happiness was more important. And yeah, and there's a little naivety that comes with it, right? I was like 30 and didn't have a family or a house or mortgage I have to worry about. So I quit without having another job. And then somebody told me about this job working for Bacardi USA. And I was like, oh, it was very elementary. I took a major step back, took 50% salary decrease. And I was like, oh, this is great. I'll just do this until I figure out what I want to do next. And, 10 years at Bacardi. And now I've been with Moet Hennessy going on 12 years. I was lucky enough to see what a fantastic industry it is, and especially when you're fortunate to work for great companies representing great brands.
Yeah. So that switch what prompted you to write the wine lover's guide to parenting?
So a couple things. I think one. I wrote it because certainly all my worlds were colliding. Obviously, my career in wine, and as a wine lover, that aspect, part of my job is it's all about storytelling, telling the story of our brands and the history and the heritage. And I love the idea of storytelling, but also working in the wine industry, I hate that sometimes wine can be so jarring for people, right? When I go out to dinner with my friends, and the wine list comes and they pass it to me, and I'm like, no, it shouldn't be that way. Wine is subjective. Like, you don't need to be an expert. What I like, you may not like, and vice versa. So I love the idea of making wine knowledge accessible and easy and fun. And then, couple with that with, I'm very involved in my niece and nephew's lives. I am Aunt Danielle to many of my friends' kids. I was a bonus mom to my ex-fiance's kids for many years. And we broke up. I broke it off because I realized once we got engaged that ultimately he didn't want more kids. And that was something I really wanted. So now I was just faced with sort of this crossroads where, motherhood wasn't happening for me, but it doesn't mean the nurturing goes away. And, I may not be raising children of my own, but I still felt a pull to influence the kind of humans we collectively are raising. And so my book became part of that. That's all how it came together, is just, again, wanting to make wine knowledge fun and easy. It's written like a children's rhyming illustrated book, but clearly not made for kids, because, kids are most influential, right from birth. We gotta instill these manners and good behaviors at a very young age. So I thought writing it as like a children's book, rhyming, and it just makes it fun. And again, I don't profess to be a licensed psychologist or a professional, so I wanted it to be fun and enjoyable and light and humorous.
So I have to bring up one question that I know you probably get a lot, because a lot of people are probably going to ask, well, how is she qualified to write a book about parenting if she's not a parent? And, but the book is written in such a way that I think even parents, that even my girls are grown and I'm cracking up laughing at this book. So tell your naysayers why they should get this book.
Yeah, I mean, I think me not being a parent is actually the secret sauce, right? I've spent years watching parents from the outside. I was a bonus mom for many years, but I get to do it all without the sleep deprivation, of course. But I think also not having kids means I see parenting with fresh eyes, and oftentimes a full wine glass. I've listened to parents trade war stories like battle-hardened soldiers. And sometimes when you're in the trenches, it's not so easy to see that the grape juice you're drinking can someday be a fine Cabernet. So it comes from a place of light levity, empathy, compassion. And, the lessons in here is just all about basic human decency, right? Like, teach your kids manners, teach them not to be a bully, teach them to be worldly. So you don't need to be a parent to know good behavior in human beings.
100% true. And when we come back from our commercial, you're going to read a part of your book. So here we go for a commercial.
When cancer crashed into my life, it tried to take everything. My health, my career, even my joy. Hands-free! Yeah! But I refused to let it. Instead, I discovered something powerful, that laughter and hope and small moments of joy could be just as powerful as any prescription. I've worn many hats: entrepreneur, consultant, speaker, and most importantly, mom. But the role I never expected, cancer thriver. And I realized that my story isn't just mine. It's something that others needed too. My book, Finding hope and joy in cancer is part survival guide, part pep talk, and yes, even part comedy special for your soul. It's raw, it's real, it's filled with wisdom and stories and laughs that helped carry me through treatment and beyond. Over the years, I've built companies and communities, but this mission is different. It's about building resilience, one story at a time. My mission is simple. Hope, it's not optional. It's essential. And joy, it's waiting for you, even in the hardest chapters of your life. I'm Amanda Gunville, speaker, author, and cancer thriver. And I'm here to talk about humor, resilience, and what it really takes to find joy when life feels impossible.
And we're back with Danielle, who's going to be reading part of her book. So take it away, Danielle.
Thank you. So I'm going to read lesson 3. You don't want your kids to ferment. So one thing to note is in this book, every time I use wine terminology in each chapter, it gives the definition at the bottom. Also at the back of the book, it's a basic understanding of how wine's made. So this book is really for just anybody who loves a good humor book or wants to learn a little bit about wine as well. So you don't want your kids to ferment. So fermentation process in wine is when they turn sugar into alcohol. So when we think about sugar, something sweet, alcohol is, can be a little harsh, stringent, biting. So this is about, you don't want your kids to ferment. You want to teach them manners so they aren't harsh and biting. Manners, manners, manners are the key to it all. These lessons need to start even when they're small. Teach them this from day one before they start to crawl. You don't want your kid to be the sour grape in the bunch and turn into a spoiled brat that kids want to punch. When they start talking, make sure they know thank you and please, and to always say bless you when they hear someone sneeze. Please and thank you are an absolute must. Without that, your child's a total bust. There's nothing worse than a child who has behavior that is crude, because it'll continue as they're older and become someone who's rude. People don't take kindly to and aren't nice to those with attitude, because it's very off-putting and puts others in a bad mood, oftentimes causing confrontation and leads to a nasty feud. Wanting to put a little bit of poison in your child's food. Is that really how you want your kids to be viewed? Wouldn't you prefer that there's someone who's wooed? Without manners, they'll ferment and turn into someone harsh and biting. They may turn into a kid who's rude, obnoxious, and always fighting. So teach your kids some manners and to have some heart and soul. Without that, your kid may well turn into an a-hole.
I love that. And that literally was throughout the whole book. That kind of biting humor that you just could not stop from laughing. And there's one part in the book, and I told you this before, that you had to figure out what the word was because you didn't put it down there. She's like, I'm not going there, but I just thought it was so funny. I'm like, well, anybody who watches Real Housewives of Beverly Hills knows what that word is as well. So why did you decide to write this book in such a way that it's so entertaining?
I think humor, like I said, it's fun, it's approachable, it's a little, lighter than, again, I don't proclaim to be a clinical psychologist professional. I want to bring humor and light to it. Parents are under more pressure than ever to get everything right. And humor creates permission to breathe, to laugh, to stop pretending it's all perfect. And when we can laugh at the chaos, it becomes lighter. And honestly, that's probably when people do their best parenting. I want people to feel seen, to laugh at something that can feel overwhelming. Obviously, parenting is serious, but it doesn't have to be serious all the time. So if someone laughs, relaxes their shoulders a little bit, maybe pours themselves a glass of wine afterward, then I've done my job.
So when did the idea come for this book in the beginning? Where did it come from, and how long did it take you from, I know it was multiple questions, but how long did it take you from getting the idea in your head to actually writing it, to actually illustrating, to actually going through and getting it edited and publishing? So let's start with when it first popped in your head.
Yeah, so I was actually watching my niece and nephew, and they were very young at the time. They're adults now. And although they were great kids, of course, kids have the propensity to whine at times. And they were whining about something. And I said, Auntie Danielle drinks wine. She doesn't listen to wine. And that, immediately the light bulb went off in my head. And that's chapter 1. Chapter 1 is, I drink wine, I don't listen to wine. It's all about not letting your kids whine to get their way. So yeah, I've always used writing as a creative outlet, and the ideas just started to flow to me. When I said that to my niece and nephew and the idea popped in my head, that's when I just started to think about, how many parallels there are to wine terminology and to human behavior, right? Like the punt is the thing at the bottom of a wine bottle. It gives it depth, right? So you think about, well, you want your kids to have depth and to be worldly. The fermentation process I mentioned. Another chapter in there is about mulled wine. Well, mulled wines are heated up. They have spices added to them, so they're heated spice. So you don't want your kid to be heated spice to become a bully. So I just started to think about all these things. And like I said, I love making wine knowledge approachable and fun and easy and accessible. So then it just all the pieces of the puzzle came together, and I wrote it pretty quickly and thinking about all the wine terminology that can be relevant to human behavior, also wine terminology that rhymes well, because you won't see, a word like oenology in there because there's not a lot of stuff that rhymes with that. So thinking about, fun terms that rhyme well and that, can have multiple meanings. So I wrote it pretty quickly, but I wrote it about 14, 15 years ago. And at the time, we weren't even using the internet as wildly as we are these days. And as you can imagine, getting published, agents don't want you unless you've been published. Publishers don't want you unless you have an agent. And back then, the process was even more difficult than it is today. Like everybody had a different process. It was like applying to colleges again and like writing different college essays. Like everybody wanted a different format. You had to send in your manuscript. You had to, again, everybody had a essentially cover letter that they wanted you to write, an essay to write. And with a full-time job, it just became too much. And I shelved it for quite some time. And then, this has always been something that, like I said, if I do nothing with this, it's going to plague, on my deathbed, it's going to plague me because I've always had good feedback from it. And so self-publishing was sort of daunting to me. And so I've started hearing about the last year about this hybrid publishing model. So she used to work for one of the big houses, but she owns this company now. So it's a publisher with experience that's guiding the process, but I'm paying for everything. She's guiding the process and saying like, okay, you have to find an illustrator. So I found a fantastic illustrator who brought my vision to life in such an impeccable way. But yeah, so I went through this process and brought it to fruition. Couldn't be happier. It's still, it's a lot of work to promote and do this on your own without a big publishing house. But when it's your baby, this is the baby that I birthed. It's been super fun.
And what I love about the way you said you put it aside, because at the time when you first wrote it, there wasn't a lot of internet or anything else, but then you knew that you wanted to do something with it. How long did it take you from the time you finally said, okay, I want to do something with it, to kind of, was it completely finished when you said that, or did you edit it even some more?
Yeah, it was finished. They help with the hybrid publisher. They help find like a copy editor just to do it a glance over. But yeah, it was pretty much finished. I just then needed, I think I made the decision last year, early in 2025 that, okay, I think I'm going to do it. I'm going to do this hybrid publishing model. I'm going to invest in all of this. It just took time. It took about 6 months then to like fully get it ready with getting the illustrator, the copy editor, registering it. Then they have a specific model of looking at like best launch dates. So it's not conflicting with, other books that might be similar, although my book is very different and stands alone. So it took a while, but here we are.
Why was it important to you? Of course, because you're working in the wine and spirits world, to put the definitions down. So because a lot of people don't know about the wine world, so you were educating people about the world of wine as well in this book.
Yeah, because obviously I don't want to use a term and people like not understand how it correlates to the human behavior, right? If I just said you don't want your kids to ferment and didn't explain that it's like the process from sugar to alcohol, it might get lost in translation. And again, that was part of my goal is I love educating people on wine and making it fun, making it accessible, making it not jarring. So, hopefully people learn a little bit about wine and wine styles and definitions as well.
What has been the response to having your book out in the world, especially among your colleagues in the wine world?
Yeah, I mean, people, thankfully it's been getting a lot of great feedback, from people in the wine industry. I've gotten some good sound bites from sommeliers as well that said, is really a fun, approachable way to educate people on wine. But I've gotten great response from parents as well, because, a lot of people have said, like, particularly the mulled wine chapter, that, that bullying is a major problem these days. People unaliving themselves at like early, I mean, just, that didn't even cross my mind when we were 11, 12, and the kids, and I think the statistic from like in the last 20 years, like it's jumped up like 72% of, people that are taking their own lives under the age of 18. And I just think it's terrible. It's awful. And, bullying is a big problem these days. So the mulled wine chapters, as I said, mulled wines are heated up, they're spiced. That's about, understanding, is your kid heated, spiced? Are they packing a punch? Are they a bully at school? And a lot of parents have said to me, you never want to think it's your kid, but reading that made them look internally to be like, you don't want to believe it's your kid, but maybe I do need to, like, pay attention. If there was a complaint, or, we all want to say, not my child, but it could be your child. So it's important to nip it in the bud if it is, and it's okay,
And I will add, the mulled wine chapter, you also put a recipe in, which I thought was unique, because a lot of people have never had mulled wine. So it's like, here's a recipe that I could do. So it's something for everybody. It's something for parents, something for like the cook, or something for the person who loves wine that just may pick it up and just like, hey, this is a great gift to go with a bottle of wine. Say, here, if you're a new parent or something, here you go. Here's the book. Here's a bottle of wine. Go for it.
It's a great book for wine lovers, parents. Like I said, you pair it with a bottle of wine. Great baby shower gift. That and a little onesie, you're done.
Oh yeah, for sure. And maybe some sparkling cider or something to go with it. So when the baby's born, because if the mom's planning on breastfeeding, you go.
Yeah,
So
I like that.
yeah, that's a great idea. But why did you decide to do it in such a humorous way? Because I think I literally, like I was telling you, I was cracking up laughing when I was reading these pages, and I was just, okay, I can't wait. I gotta read some more. Because your sense of humor is just, you can tell by the interview already. The people can tell, but it's off the charts. I mean, really, honestly. So what made you decide to take that sense of humor approach to it?
Thank you. Yeah. I've always been somebody who, I love making people laugh. I am the eternal optimist. I see the glass half full, not half empty. And as I said, parents are under a lot of pressure, and just humor adds a little levity, and, lightens the mood, and helps parents just take a little breath and realize, like, you can laugh through the chaos. We're not gonna anything in life, not even just parents, but we're never gonna get it, perfectly, every aspect of our life. There's gonna be little bumps and bumps in the road along the way. I think humor is just a great mechanism for managing those bumps.
Yes, and for sure, because you talk about some really heavy subjects, like you talk about bullying, you talk about having manners, you're talking about, appreciating others, and, and making sure that you're teaching your kids the right things, because kids nowadays are learning the wrong things about how to be. And so I love how you did that in such a way that was not only entertaining, but not pointing fingers at parents either. Because I think once you start pointing fingers, people get their backs up and they're like, I don't even want to read this anymore. But you did it in such a fun way that the parents were like, okay, all right, I can tell. Yeah, I did that. Let me go correct myself for this.
Yeah. And as I said, like I didn't become a mom, but I did become someone, and I am somebody who deeply cares about how kids are shaped. And, that's why the book is my way of showing up for that, you don't need to be a mother to want to see good behavior in humans. We need it now more than ever, and I always call myself like an outsider insider, because, especially with my friends' kids that call me Aunt Danielle, and when I was a bonus mom, I am invested in the welfare of these kids. So I might not be, the parent, the insider, but as somebody on the outside, I have a vested interest in making sure that they become good human beings.
Yeah, and you do it in such a way that it's not preaching, but it's like, okay, here you go. laughing, joking, but it's serious subjects.
Yeah.
Now it's just, I love how you're also redefining what family really looks like too, as well, because a lot of times people think family is who you're born into or your blood, but sometimes that doesn't always is the case, because family sometimes can disappoint you more than your friends who become family. So let's talk about that.
100%. Yeah, I've had to redefine family from something I was or thought I was supposed to have into something I choose to build. And like you said, for me, family isn't just blood. It's, you choose your chosen family, your friends, the people you surround yourself with. It's about consistency, safety, who's showing up. And yeah, I had to ask, if I don't follow the quote unquote traditional script, what does a full, meaningful life look like to me? And that question forced me to expand the definition of family beyond just partner and kids. And I realized it's less about roles and more about relationships. And I think we're moving away from, the default family to a design family. And redefining family is really about self-awareness, knowing what nourishes you and building around that.
I love that. Are there any more books coming down the pike for you?
Yes, I am. Well, I've had lots of projects that I have like in the pipeline that I've been working on. But the next iteration of this book, which if any publishers are listening and want to be published as well, because the self-publishing route is really hard. I'd love to have a big publishing house behind me, but the next one is going to be a whiskey lover's guide to dog breeds.
Oh, okay. I gotta know what breeds are you being featured? Do you know yet?
So this will be less of like a rhyming story, and this is more about matching dog breeds to specific whiskeys or bourbons. So, for example, Maker's Mark would be a Cavalier King Charles Spaniel would be the Maker's Mark of whiskeys. Maker's Mark is known for being soft, sweet, low on harsh char or rye spice. Same, the Cavalier is an incredibly gentle, affectionate, smooth-tempered dog, mirrors the easy drinking nature of the whiskey. So, both trustworthy, warm, balanced, and friendly companions. So matching styles like that together.
I love that. And I can think there's a lot of brand recognition that comes with it, when you do the whiskey, that maybe you could team up with some of these whiskey makers to do a pop-up or something like that with your books.
I would love that. So whiskey makers, bourbon makers, if you're listening, it's all on the table.
I love that. And so are you just going to focus more on spirits and wine in your writing, or are you going to do some other writing?
No, yeah, actually I have like a proper children's book series that I've started. Again, I just have such a vested interest in seeing kids become great human beings. So that is a proper children's book for kids, rhymes, because I always love rhyming, and that's all about making kids realize, it's learning different cultures. It's all about that we all sleep under the same star skies, right? Just because somebody looks different or dresses different. So it's really about trying to ingrain in kids at a young age just acceptance of other people and other cultures. So that I've worked on. I have this great idea, serial killer idea. So that's a little bit going way off course of wine and whiskey. I wrote it as a short story. I'd like to write it as a novel one day in my spare time. Yeah. So I get inspiration comes at different moments, so I have lots of different ideas all over the place.
Well, I will definitely say that children's book is something that we need in the world right now, so go ahead and write that book and finish writing it, because we need it, especially in the US right now more than ever.
Oh yeah, no kidding.
So our time is almost up. Is there one last little thing that either we talked about that you want to reiterate, or something we didn't touch on that you want to talk about? The floor is yours.
Yeah, I just, I just want people to hopefully enjoy it, feel seen, and to laugh at something that can feel overwhelming. As I said, parenting is serious, but it doesn't have to be so serious all the time. And, there's no such thing as a perfect parent, just like there's no such thing as a perfect wine. It's all about finding what works for you, embracing the messiness, enjoying the process a little bit more. And when in doubt, pour yourself a glass of wine.
I remember when one of my friends, when her son was little, he's 16 now, but she was like, "This is mommy's juice. This is mommy juice." She would call. He said, "Mommy needs her juice right now," because her husband was deployed a lot. So she was with him a lot. So she's like, "I just need 5 minutes to drink my mommy juice and then I'll be good to go." But I also love the fact that you brought humor into the world, where the world needs so much more humor than it does right now. And being resilient, because parenting is hard. But what parent hasn't laughed at something their kid's done when they're trying to punish them, when they think it's hilarious what they're saying? But you're like, oh, that what they did was wrong. But oh my gosh, that was so funny, and trying not to laugh. So
I know. It's like I've seen all these Instagram memes where like, the kid like lets out a curse word and the parents like trying not to laugh, but it's really kind of funny.
and then they're like, oh, we shouldn't laugh because they'll give them
Yeah.
positive feedback and they'll continue to do it. But I think the more they just let it go and say, whatever, they won't continue to say that word because they won't
Right, exactly.
So, Danielle, thank you for coming on and for writing this hilarious book. Tell people where they can find you at.
Well, thank you again so much for having me on and letting me chat with you and your audience. My book is available at Amazon.com, BarnesandNoble.com. I can be found at www.daniellefrankauthor.com or on Instagram at Create a Great Story.
Create a Great Story. I love that. Why did you decide to do that name for Instagram?
I really live my life. I try to live it to the fullest, of course, within legal limits, but I really try and check everything off my bucket list. Like when I was a kid, I was obsessed with game shows. Okay. I went on a game show 2 years ago. I was like, I like to check things off my life bucket list. I love traveling the world, experiencing every culture. I'm on a plane tomorrow to Spain, actually, for 2 weeks. So I coined that because I thought, you know what? I'm creating a great story that is my life. And Instagram shows the pictures of that, the foods and the travels and all that. So I thought it was perfectly coined for my story.
Okay. You were on a game show? What game show?
$100,000 pyramid.
Did you win?
I won 7,500. Of course, Uncle Sam took most of it. Yeah, I made it to the winner's circle. It's very nerve-wracking. It's like I won one of the words. I accidentally said the word, and then I went, "You're not supposed to." And then the last, the top one was things made of stone, and I just went blank. I mean, now I think about this every night. I'm like, I could have said Barney Rubble's car, UK's Henge monuments. Boom, would have been things made of stone. No, I was like, all I could think of was like stone granite counters or stone I just blanked, and I was just, but yeah, it was just such a fun experience, and yeah, I won a little money, so not too bad.
So was there a celebrity that you were giving the clues to that you were working with?
So my episode was Wayne Brady and Joel Kim Booster. And Joel Kim Booster, he came to play. Like he got myself, not that Tom Brady, I wish it was Tom Brady. Not that Wayne Brady was bad. He was good too. But Joel Kim Booster, he came, like he even said, he's like, I was practicing like crazy. He got myself to the winner's circle, and he got the other girl to the winner's circle when she was paired with him. And she actually won the 25, or was it 25 or 50,000? Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. He came to play.
He came to play. He was really good. Yeah.
Yeah. So Danielle, thank you again for coming on, for writing this funny book. I mean, y'all, you need to go get this book because this book is so fun. Even if you're not a parent, even if you're not a wine lover, just get the book because you will crack up laughing in this book. I don't think there was a page that I didn't laugh.
Thank you so much. Thank you for the kind words. And again, thank you so much for having me on.
Not a problem. So guys, I will put in the show notes everywhere you can find Danielle, as well as you can find her book. Also gonna put down her Instagram name because I didn't have that on the screen, but I'll put that in the show notes. If you like this episode, please share it with a friend, like, review, and subscribe. And until next time, guys, bye.